Do you know that feeling when being alone doesn't feel lonely at all? When the quiet around you feels like the safest place to be compared to a gathering in a room full of people? I find that solitude is often misunderstood, mistaken for social isolation or loneliness. In my case, solitude is just a deliberate choice separate from feelings of loneliness. In this space of chosen aloneness, I find not only comfort, but clarity, I find wellness and inspiration. As an artist, I spend a great deal of time alone, not because I dislike people, but more because I genuinely enjoy meaningful social interaction, especially when it flows with ease between people who share similar values, aesthetics, and points of view. These exchanges, they nourish me, but they are made even more enriching by the contrast that solitude provides. My home becomes a sanctuary in a way. I find peace in the company of my surroundings, the glow of a lit lamp, the soft curve of an armchair, the stillness of a coffee table. As someone who loves interior design, these elements to me, they're not just objects. They feel in a certain way like gentle presences, almost like companions. I sometimes think of them the way Edvard Munch spoke of his paintings as children he couldn't bear to part from. My home becomes like this, an extension of my inner world, holding space for thought and creativity. Solitude has shaped the way I think, the way I feel, and the way I process life. The silence offers a mirror. Louise Bourgeois once said, "Solitude, even prolonged solitude, can only be of very great benefit." I found that to be deeply true. Alone, I untangle complex thoughts, I feel my emotions more fully, and it kind of becomes its own therapy, in a way, a practice of self-examination and acceptance. Beginning with the interior pieces I started painting in 2019 and continuing into my most recent work, solitude is a recurring theme, reflected not only in the subjects I choose, but in the stillness of the compositions themselves. They are quiet meditations on contentment and richness of one's own company. Georgia O'Keeffe said, "There is a kind of freedom in being alone." I do believe at the same time in balance and that human connection is equally vital. Relationships, in my opinion, they offer perspective, they offer warmth and spontaneity, and these are all elements that refresh the creative spirit. For me, solitude is not about withdrawing from the world, but about creating space for deeper engagement with myself, with others, and with my art. There's a beautiful rhythm I've come to recognize. Connection fuels creativity, and solitude refines it. In the presence of others, ideas spark, and in the quiet that follows, they take shape. Art making demands a particular kind of focus, one I've never quite been able to sustain in conversation. While many artists describe painting as a way to quiet the mind, a moment where thoughts dissolve and they slip into a peaceful state, my experience is a little different. I don't know if anyone will relate to this, but when I paint, my thinking can't stop. In fact, I find that it often intensifies. So the act of painting seems to open a wider space that invites more reflection, more questions, and more inner dialogue. It does not silence my thoughts. So like that, I've tried painting with my partner Adrian in the room or anyone from my family, but I can't seem to split myself between the act of creating and the presence of another, and no matter how familiar this person can be. While silence is ideal for creating, sometimes it can also feel too loud. So a bit of music or a podcast can accompany the process without disrupting it. I sometimes wonder if I'm missing out on the richness that comes with a more dynamic, people-filled life. In Live a Little, we have the merging of the words live and leave, conveying the push and pull between comfort and departure, stillness and motion. The title suggests the act of leaving just a little so you can leave a little more. It's the realization that life might ask for an occasional step beyond the walls we built around our comfort. The painting wants to be a contrast between solitude, enhanced by the room, filled with quiet forms like the sitting figure and its companion cat, and life outside the room, a scene in the dancing figures framed behind glass, alive with movement, connection, and shared experience. At 29 years of age, I am still learning how to be with myself, how to be with others, how to listen more deeply to both silence and sound, and I cannot claim to have any answers or specific advice on this subject. I am only bringing a collection of personal reflections and the ongoing work of understanding myself as I grow. Perhaps one day I will find myself living the opposite, a life fuller with movement, noise, and shared energy, and see what few thoughts I gather along the way. I think every stage of life holds something to teach us. Each chapter brings a new insight, understanding, and a different way to look at things.